We're live. Welcome to episode number 81 of Let's Humanize the Workplace. And I'm almost celebrating my 1 year anniversary of Let's Humanize the Workplace. My name is Vivian Aqua, and I'm the inclusive workplace wellness advocate. And I just wanted to have a conversation with you. A lot of people don't know, or maybe don't realize, or maybe they have forgotten that Let's Humanize the Workplace is also available on the favorite, podcast platform. So if you don't have the time to tune in live, or maybe you have the time to tune in partially, know that if you wait a few days, you can always listen back, or maybe listen back to the past episodes, right? I do, however, have to say that I've done a few episodes in Dutch. So there are some Dutch conversations in there, but as from next year, I will be continuing more often in English. So that you know. I also have to ask you something, right? I want you to share the love of Let's Humanize the Workplace, because I want to be able to do this more often, and I want others to know, to realize what they can do about humanizing the workplace, because I believe that it's a responsibility of the employee, but also the employer. And when we meet each other in the middle, that's when we can amplify the humanization in the workplace. So that's my belief. If you're tuning in for the first time, Vivian Aqua, and I'm all about creating a thriving workplace. So, going to something new. A lot of people know that I am passionate about workplace wellness. I'm passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But not everybody realize that, the buildings, our environment can also cause that passion. There, I have a little guest who's coming in at the moment, so he might be tuning in. It's my son, the reason why I do what I do. Zeg je dag? Zeg je dag? The reason why, yeah, it's his bedtime, Dutch bedtime. So I normally say goodbye to him before or after, but he wanted to show up and say hello to all the guests. What I was about to say, that regarding our environment. So one of the things that I've seen recently, ABN AMRO is a huge international bank for here in the Netherlands, and also international. And they are saying goodbye to their head office in a predominant space, and they are moving towards a new space. But I also want to say that they are creating a workplace or a thriving office where people can be themselves. A lot of people don't realize that the office, the way we used to know them, as in as in the buildings itself, or the office itself, or what can I say, if you have like 80 colleagues who are calling, right, and you're the only one who likes to work in a quiet space, that means that other people are holding you hostage in that space. So I'm glad that ABN AMRO is taking these steps to create a sustainable workplace. And I also want to challenge them to create a workplace where people can be themselves. And where people can be themselves, I mean that mothers, are able to do what they need to do for their kids. That people may be able to do a nap in their workplace, or people that can be able to sport in their workplace, or that people who are neurodiverse can thrive in a workplace, or maybe they have a blue environment. If you're feeling like you want to, settle down, cool down, maybe you need a blue environment, or maybe you need a green environment, whatever environment is working for you. So I see a positive trend, which I see that companies are looking differently towards their physical workspace. And I'm hoping that they are revamping their workspace where everybody can be themselves and everybody can charge themselves up. Because knowing I have worked in places where there was no daylight, there was the environment was really sucking the energy out of me. And my wish is that more workplaces, more physical workplaces. I know that's It's not a topic for now, but we also have to think about where are we going to be in 1.5 years. I believe that next year the lockdown will still be there, but after 1.5 years, where are we going to work and how would the workplace look then, right? We still want to create an environment where we are able to connect with each other. At least that's what I'm hoping. So today's topic, it's about cultural fit. And before we discuss what cultural fit, or before we have a discussion about cultural fit, I think it is important. No, I know it is important to make that definition clear. So this is from a dictionary, or this is from a website where I shared something. So what is a cultural fit? A cultural fit is an ideal match between employee and employer. It's like dating. In a job search process, you want to find somebody who can work well with, who you can work well with, who shares your basic values, beliefs, and can complement the company or the team well. Basically, a cultural fit is someone who fits seamlessly within the company and organizational culture, the value systems, beliefs, leadership structure, and the customs of the organization, the way things work here. You know that I'm quoting things, right? Because I want to I want to say something, but I also want to include our panel guests in this conversation. So I'm seeing already hi from people. So thank you, Shaf Gupta. Thank you, Michael, for joining this conversation. And I need to bring the people up. I first want to say that unfortunately, some of the guest speakers could not make it, but nevertheless, the guest speakers that are here are going to speak up about this topic. So I want to bring up the guest speakers. I see Yvonne is showing up double. Okay, let me share a bio. So first of all, Sesen. Sesen is a transformation and change manager who cares about bridging the gap between leaders and employees by creating a desired organizational company culture and revamping leadership behavior. Yvonne is a DEI strategist who is dedicated to advancing cultural awareness and leading organizations to develop a cognitively diverse workforce. And then, unfortunately, Greg and Jabez could not make it, but I'm hoping that Jabez will be joining in the comment section. And then we have Maiwa Adebi. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your name right. And if not, please correct me because that's where we are at, right? The founder and the host of the Day In, Day Out podcast. This is a twice weekly show where he brings in all the good and the great and fantastic. And last but not least, Nick Kuda, who is a product designer and accessibility advocate, passionate about working with mission-driven companies and helping newer designs grow professional. It's a whole mouthful, I know that. Mayua, can you help me? Did I pronounce your name right?
You're not going to be the first or last person to get my name wrong.
No, but I do. When it comes to inclusion, when it comes to DEI, of course, I can make a mistake, and we also have to honor that other people are making mistakes. But I do want to give you the stage to help me with the pronunciation of your name, your full name.
Miwa Adibi.
Miwa Adibi. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I see other people like, thank you for saying that.
Thank you. So let me start off with Sesen. Sesen, the first question, why do we need to humanize? And now we have a virtual workplace, but why do you feel that we need to do that?
We can replace everything that is technical or any physical stuff. You can replace employees. That's what leaders try to tell me. And I tell them how much it costs them to replace someone really, because the language they understand is the money, the dollar. And we are working in a different setting. In the industrial area where you just had people to execute the same task, it was not important to care about the people. But right now with the next generation, it doesn't work that way.
Thank you. And I'm all up for it. Miwa?
Yeah, Why do we need to humanize the virtual workplace? One of the things with the virtual workplace, which a key thing it's going to be missing, is those sort of moments which you get in an office before the pandemic, well, before the lockdowns, is like meeting up, having like bringing someone a cup of tea, chatting, and all of these small little things which make the world of difference and makes a workplace a good place to be. And with a virtual workplace, it's very hard, I would say almost nigh on impossible to have these moments, because you can do game nights, you can do this, but it's kind of forced where you just like, oh yeah, I'm going for lunch. Do you want to come with me? And that kind of is
Yeah, but it still can be doable though. I know that a lot of people are facing challenges with this, not having the water cooler talk or the lunch dates or whatever, but it doesn't mean that team building is gone, right? Virtually, you can virtually still do a lot, still replace a lot, but it's not the same as the real thing.
No, like it's one of those things. I agree. Yes, you can still do team building, but when the team is together, it's a different energy than when it's over a virtual link.
True. Yvonne.
Yes. So I agree with what my DEI colleagues indicated. You know, as humans, we're built for in-person social connection. And it's been proven that physical distance does create some forms of psychological distance. So, for example, remote working doesn't easily trigger emotional responses the same way that in-person interactions do. And this includes, for example, empathy and deep connection. So humanizing the virtual workplace is really critical. Some facets of this include things like word choice, facial expressions as a conduit of empathy, choosing our words with care, and really ensuring that our facial expressions reflect our intent. If an employee, for example, is sharing their challenges with their manager or a colleague, and the person is off camera or seemingly distracted, it can really make them feel unimportant and unheard. So instead, we should be more tapped in. We need to take more time to lean in and make the person the same focus that you would do if they were in person.
Yeah, and what I totally agree. And what I wanted to add to that, sometimes people make facial expressions which you cannot match to what they are saying. And I would rather have you have a conversation one-on-one with that person, asking them, I noticed that you were making a certain expression while I was saying that. Could you maybe help me? Because maybe in the meantime they were reading, a funny email, or maybe they were doing something else in the meantime, and it had nothing to do with what you were sharing. People can be distracted, people can do other things, but I also want to encourage you that it's not a good way to put a colleague on the spot by asking them on that spot, saying that, what did you mean? I'm seeing a twitch in your face, or I'm seeing a smirk in your face, right? Yeah. Nick.
So I agree with what everyone else has said. I think it seems simple. We need to humanize the workplace and virtual workplace so that every individual feels equally seen and heard, and that they can contribute. But also, Vivian, you touched on something that I'm pretty passionate about, recognizing in people and team members. You touched on people have different working styles, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're a parent and you need to take breaks throughout the day, or you do your best and most creative work at night or in the morning, and vice versa. Are you collaborative, or do you work better somewhat autonomously? Being able to recognize that each individual has their own working style, I think brings us a step closer to, humanizing the workplace.
Yeah. But then you also have to, you also have to maybe test, or maybe find out what kind of people you have in your team and what their working styles are. And the managers also need to be aware of the different working styles, because otherwise we will tap in this whole culture fit thing, but it feels like it also fits in the question as this is not the way we work here.
Yeah. So one thing, real quick, just a tangent, that my design team did, we created playing cards for each of us. And some of the questions were like asking about, do you work autonomously? Are you more collaborative? And you kind of have a sliding scale. But it just gives us a better understanding of how people work, how best to communicate with them. And it also, when you're onboarding new, in my case, designers, it just kind of gives them an easy introduction, especially virtually, to who they'll be working with.
Yeah. So how many cards do we have to, how many boxes did you tick then?
On the playing card? Oh, how many? I think we only had about 8 or so topics on the card, which was more about how you're working, how you communicate, favorite part of the design process. And we did have a section on there that said night owl or favorite time of day to work. And mine was definitely night owl.
Which is an important question that should be asked all the time, right? And so not only because of this pandemic, but also for future references. People thrive under different occasions. I'm an early bird. Well, before Corona, I was waking up like 5:30. Now I wake up between 6:30 and 7:15 ish.
Yeah.
I have a son. I have a child who's
still
really
early.
I have a son who is my alarm clock, so I have to wake up by then. So starting with you, Nick, is culture fit the enemy of diversity? How do you see this?
Yeah, I don't think that culture fit in itself is the enemy of diversity, because we're introduced very early on in our lives to gender and racial stereotypes, societal expectations, and kind of how to interact with people, right? Well before we're ever applying to our first job. But also, not all individuals or companies have the same values, beliefs, behaviors, or based on that, their own version of culture fit. But what I do believe is that people use culture fit to mask a candidate's strengths or weaknesses, kind of as a reason not to hire someone, right? Saying someone isn't a good candidate because we didn't click is obviously not the right way to evaluate someone, right? Candidates should be evaluated based on their skill set, their experience in relation to what the role that they're applying for requires.
Yeah, totally get that. Yvonne?
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I think that it depends on the organization. I do think that in some instances, culture fit can be counterproductive to diversity efforts, as well as innovation too. So, what most organizations mean by culture fit are the synergies of the office, how well the team gets along, how employees embody the beliefs and values of the company, and sometimes even demographic profile of the team. Yeah. So for some, it's even as narrow as, I want to hire people that I would like to hang out with. And what you end up with that is more of a homogeneous culture. And it really, unfortunately, sometimes disregards the value and the advantages of diverse backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. It really just sends a message that, hey, we're good with what's already working, and you need to really come into what already exists. And if you don't, then you don't fit. But, as study after study shows, I think homogeneous groups are less informed, they're less effective, and less decisive. Whereas more diversity of background, experience, and thought, in contrast, both in identity and cognitively, you find them so much more effective, innovative, adaptable, and agile. They're the key for growth and long-term success. So I think that we have to be really careful about how we're talking about culture fit. And I'm actually a big proponent of moving away from the terminology of culture fit and more to culture add.
Yeah, I totally agree. And regarding this whole culture fit thing, it's also the way, I share the definition of culture fit, but it's also the way that people interpret it. It's also the way that they want to uphold, again, the homogeneous group, and the way that's being used, especially when you see it, or when I see it in vacancies. They are looking for somebody who fits in the culture, and I'm just like, what kind of culture are you referring to? Because when I look on your site, when I look on your YouTube channel, I only see one and the same. Is that the culture that you're looking for, whilst preaching for, or saying that you want diverse people, saying that you are positive for diversity, but yet again, you're using certain words and you're using culture fits, words that fit in the culture fit, as in the one group that dominates the workplace. Sesen.
Yeah, I will answer from a different perspective with an example. So first of all, culture fit for me is definitely the enemy of innovation. Because what leaders understand is they close up when you use the word diversity, right? And especially if I use it because they want to label me with this word, I don't position myself with diversity, by the way. So I use those terms that they understand. It's the enemy of innovation. One example that I want to give you is that our Swedish consultancy that I used to work in was an agile, nice, flat hierarchy company. And then suddenly a bigger one bought us. And the message that I want to give you is it's not always you, right? We were okay the way we were, and then we came to an old-fashioned 90s style company, and suddenly we were the people that didn't fit in. So you don't need to change yourself all the time. Make sure that you align with the values. And just because you don't align to their values doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. Because if a company loves, toxic values, then you don't want to adjust, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So that's definitely a big cross-check that you need to do by yourself. And we were like 500 people joining an enterprise, and we were a misfit totally. Yeah, and we didn't want to fit into that culture, so that's totally fine. And if you need to compromise on your values and principles, then it's okay not to be a culture fit.
Yeah. Interesting. Mayua?
Like with regards to is culture a culture fit the enemy of diversity? It comes down to the organization. For myself, I would say it's not. There's going to be some organizations which doesn't mean a damn thing to them. They're like happy to take anyone from anywhere. They're happy with that. Move things forward. Be creative. But there are certain organizations, like say in the consulting world, if you don't go to a top tier university, like Red Bricks over here, or say like part of the Oxford Cambridge system, or Yale, Harvard, and then like you're not going to a particular business school, you don't have a chance. And like through just their sort of selection process from those organizations, it's going to be a certain type always being selected. So you don't get that diversity. But as I say, it just comes down to the organization. And some organizations need to move with the times, and some organizations, with what we're seeing going on in the world, are heading towards extinction very quickly.
Can you be specific? Because maybe there are some people, or maybe ostriches, not being aware of what's happening in the world. Can you maybe be specific? Because there's a lot happening in the world right now.
For example, if you look at the world of retail, like there are a number of organizations, companies which have not sort of modernized with the times, where, okay, most purchases now are being done online. They just like kept, like they've been around for 10, 20, 30 years, long time institutions. Here in the UK, there's a company called the Arcadia Group, and like they have like some of the biggest well-known names in the country, and they've gone into administration today. And you could say, right, people could blame the owner, going, yes, they took out this much money for the dividends, everything like this. But it was an old school way of thinking with regards to how retail is, and it's always going to stay that way, where they could have benefited for someone who may have been more versed in e-commerce and went, okay, this is what's coming down the road. And it's just basically, they've missed it and they're not going to get back.
Your story reminds me of something that I recently read. So I read that Netflix wanted to partner with Blockbuster. I don't know if you are familiar with Blockbuster. It's a big video company in the US. And at the time, I think early 90s, they were huge. And Netflix wanted to partner with them. There was somebody in charge. I'm forgetting her name, but she was part of a very high ranking, and she saw the value of Netflix working together with Blockbuster. Blockbuster said no. They said that Netflix did not have value. They did not see anything in them, whilst Netflix was just starting. Let's look at Netflix now.
Yeah.
Let's look at what Netflix is doing when it comes. I'm not saying that they are the best company in diversity, but they are making effort. They are making steps. They are including other voices and showcasing that, because they see the power, they see the value. And when you have diverse people in your company, whereas you amplify culture add instead of, amplifying the culture fit, that's what can happen. Think about Netflix think about becoming the next Netflix in a positive way.
And Blockbuster here in the U.S. is no more, as Nick can attest to. They were essentially, run out of business because that's not what the customer demand was. And Netflix was able to look, I think, further down the pipe to say, what is it that our customer base is looking for, not just today, but in the future. And as a result, they are not only have they survived, but they're thriving. They're putting out original content. They're doing some really amazing things and striking amazing partnerships with other entities as a result. But it really does require that future perspective, and requires, to us to embrace the disruptors. Right, when it comes to industry. And again, sometimes that can be the enemy to culture fit, is that innovation and that innovative perspective that needs to be involved in order for companies to really compete and succeed.
I love that. Let's start with you, Yvonne. So going up to the next question, how can companies, leaders, recruiters, because I do see, a triangle there, like leaders, companies, or leaders, companies, and recruiters. That's where this whole culture fit comes in first, right? So how can they move beyond this culture fit collective?
Right. As a collective, I would say that, taking an honest and really holistic look at their culture, the candidate search, and their hiring practices, focusing on, instead of the fit for the now, but really looking at gaining the valuable elements that the organization or the team culture doesn't currently have in place, but is seeking to attain. So it's really about looking at what you don't have and don't do as of today, that a particular candidate appears to bring to the table. So it's more of an attitude, even from the recruiting standpoint, of disruptors welcome. As long as they're disrupting in a productive and effective way, these are the positive deviants that are doing things different from the current team or the organization that are yielding the type of results we're looking for and where we're looking to go. Because if we keep hiring more of what already exists, they are essentially working against their own best interests. They're essentially selecting against their opportunities to really compete and succeed. And recruiters can do their part by actively seeking positive deviance in their candidate interview questions. Like, what's your impression of how our company is marketing to demographic X? Or based on what you do know, how do you think we could improve what we're already doing? And I think this is where forward thinkers really reveal themselves and stand out from the competitors. And that's what you want, are people who stand out and have some really novel ideas and concepts that don't currently reside within the organization or the team. Those are the people that recruiters should be looking at.
Yes, I totally agree. And it reminds me of a video that I saw recently about a guy, a painter, being fired. He was working at a big painting company, and he was making TikTok videos about mixing colors. I don't know if you have seen that one, but he had some ideas. He shared the ideas with the manager of creating value-added videos so that more customers could buy that particular brand. He got fired. And because of that, he started showcasing his videos elsewhere. And now he is building his own business by creating creative marketing content for other companies. So I also want you to be very conscious of who you are letting go, especially in these times, because people can share their trials and tribulations. I'm not saying, I'm not saying that everybody should do the cancel culture or invest in the cancel culture, but I do want employers or managers to realize that your actions have consequences. Your actions can be showcased online, and that's not what you want. Nick.
I think I don't know if this is low cost or low effort, but recognizing that interviews are intimidating. It's a pretty intimidating scenario, right? Especially if you have multiple people interviewing you. So in today's workplace, and in addition to gender or race, I believe another group that can be unfairly judged in an interview setting is those that are soft-spoken or introverted. It's not to say that this behavior is fair, but there is an advantage to being outspoken in an interview setting and being able to recognize and adapt to certain interactions when it comes to talking about your skills or experience with an interviewer. But just because someone may be quiet or seem nervous in an interview doesn't mean they wouldn't be a model employee or add a lot to the business.
Yeah, it's also a one-time, how do you say that? It's also a one-time thing that you're seeing, right? When you're taking a test at this moment, for instance, a personality test or maybe the Gallup test, you're only testing that person in the moment, whilst you don't know how that person will behave tomorrow, or how that person will, how the end results will be tomorrow or next week, right? We also have to look beyond the future.
Yeah, that is tough. You give yourself a couple hours to interview, one person for a job that you expect them to be there for years, right? So, yeah, I totally agree.
People knowledge. Know about people. Activate your empathy. So much more that we can do. But Hiwa, can you share something?
With regards to basically what companies, leaders, recruiters can do, it's just think outside of your regular box, because too many people get stuck in that. And you kind of see it where if someone comes from a big institution, college or university, that they get instant prestige, where they might be middle of the pack there, but they might be getting someone who's absolutely fantastic from a state university in America or a polytechnic in the UK. I think there's a little bit too much. Certain organizations will go, yeah, we only take people from this institution or this type of institution alike, and they won't go outside of that box. Yeah.
And you're missing out on innovation, on new ideas, on new creation, especially in this fast-moving world that we're in right now. I sometimes think about what would the pandemic be in the early 90s, where we did not have internet, where we did not have that connectivity, whilst we do now. I know for a lot of people, it's not what they want, but it's solving the connectivity challenge in a huge way.
Yeah, but it goes back to your point with the gentleman who was doing TikToks,
Yeah.
like basically like bringing up awareness and stuff like this. There are many organization which haven't looked at, say, doing YouTube, have not looked at doing podcasts, have not looked at doing TikToks, because that's not what we do. And like, we're not some type of teeny bopper when you're like going, well, these are going to be your future customers, and you like, it's not always going to be boppers on there. So yeah,
I think you did something like this, right?
I cannot drop my mic now.
Sesen.
Leaders need to acknowledge that they have an issue here. That's the first step, because if you don't know about it and you're not aware of what you are doing wrong, it doesn't help, right? So one example, maybe because the others covered it all, I can tell you what not to do. Again, back to my example of the one company. When they saw the change this year, the social senders, they changed the job descriptions. And suddenly you saw only people of color. And now I was asking myself, where are the white people now? They are gone. We never asked you to remove them, right? So this is not the idea. This is recruiting and diversity go wrong, right? Because no one said to you, pull out all the white people. We just said to you, give us a better chance and don't make it harder for them based on certain features. So this, I think, just blindly doing some actions doesn't make sense at all.
And also when it comes to the stock photos, right? Can we please stop using the window dressing? Because the moment that person walks in the company or sees, you know that LinkedIn has a page where people can see the employees and can see the images.
But the thing is, I've never seen a job description or picture from them covering other people than just white people. And suddenly fully switch to the other perspective, and you are like, what's happening now? So, and then you would ask yourself, where are the old people now? Where are the disabled people now? Where are the young people now? And just, a full misunderstanding, or just, I don't know.
It's also about acknowledging where you're at. And I was recently tagged in a post of companies announcing, I think it was Diageo and so many other companies that are announcing 2025. This is our target for 2025, and this is our target for 2030. I don't want to discredit that, because I do know that it's a good start. But however, I do want to challenge all these companies. What are you doing now to work towards that goal? What are you communicating internally? It's not about the communication that you're sharing outside. I'm caring more. What are you communicating with the people that are managerialized, right? That aren't seeing themselves there? Are you listening to them? Are you giving them a platform? Are you doing the work now to work towards that goal? Because if you're just sharing that goal and 5 years, we're already almost at 2021 right now, right? And hoping that next year will be a year where we can, walk freely, take the planes, travel freely. But 2025 is around the corner. What are you doing now to implement those steps to creating that equitable world, equitable workplace?
Wow.
Can I add one thing to the
one at a time?
Go ahead. Sesen, please go ahead.
So the recruiters, I've realized this year, or recognized this year, that every recruiter was reaching out to me. Yeah, this company wants to have more women at a certain higher level, and you are like, okay, so can you please, in your first 3 minutes, I don't want to hear you want women and women of color, because if this is the way that you approach me, I might be interested. Why don't you just tell me what they are looking for? And then challenge your client, challenge your customer not to look for certain features, because sometimes you are looking for someone with a certain mindset and you automatically exclude older people. older than
So
50.
we need
Doesn't make
to
sense.
anonymize a few things. Yeah? Yvonne
Mm.
is sharing yes. We need to anonymize, highlight, make it black, the way that the US government is doing when they're sharing items for legal documentation.
Redactions.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, I think there's value in that, though, to create a certain level of anonymity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost similar to the study of the orchestra, where they had there was an overabundance of men being cast for orchestras, and they changed up the dynamic of the evaluations where they had them come in behind a screen and wanted to just hear the skill sets, right, and their abilities to play. And they realized even with that wasn't far enough, because they were still able to see some indicators somehow or another that some were male versus female, whether it was their shadows of their hairstyles or the clicking of heels. So then they laid carpet and they made it more opaque. And so when in the end, if memory serves correctly, they ended up hiring more women to the orchestra based on their abilities by just listening. And so there are, I think, some steps that organizations can certainly take to make candidates more anonymous by taking off name and some of the other key identifiers. So that way they're literally just looking at the skill sets of the individuals and matching those up against their competition to say, hey, based on who has done what, who can do what in the future, this is how we're going to select for this particular role.
It should be, I'm hearing the voice, but then the voice at work, right? Everybody turning their chairs around so that nobody can see them, but they can still be able to see something of their work, right?
Yeah.
I also, you had a, yes. Yeah.
No, I'm going to say, with a lot of the programs which are like basically coming through now, like for the last couple of years, my thing would be, it'll be very interesting to see how many of these companies are going to hold true over the next like 24 months, because right now the hard time cometh, and last time 2008 many of these programs just disappeared like that, and they didn't come back for a good 5 years. And so what is it going to be like this time around? Will they keep these programs? Will they still like go with Culturalfit? Or is it going to be a case of, we're in a wartime situation right now and we're just going to go this way?
And with these programs, can you maybe give some more context about these programs? Are you referring to D&I programs, or are you referring to something else?
Like, I'm just like, with regards to the sort of like, cultural fit inclusion, and like sort of focusing on that, like basically doing like seminars, days, or like sort of meetings where you're gonna have to like be culturally aware of like other members of your team and like that type of situation. I don't know if there are going to be many companies be like, okay, we need to do this, or it's like, okay, we need to just make sure we've got the lights on, and we're gonna put that on the back burner for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, who knows?
Yeah, I totally get that. But I do see that we also have an obligation to keep companies accountable, keep managers accountable, right? What you're seeing, I'm seeing also in some companies that they are not only showing transparency regarding D&I, but also tying the figures towards the managers. If a manager, for instance, has a leakage of a marginalized person or somebody in a minority group, they should be penalized for it. They shouldn't be awarded for it. There should be something in it for the manager as well to do their best to keep that person in. And if somebody's leaving out, also ask them, why are you leaving? Because maybe you did everything that you could do, but still were not able to provide a safe space, or maybe they changed something. We need to ask those questions, and we need to tie in these connections to the rewards of the manager.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm
Yeah.
just, I understand where you're coming from, but like there is going to be a case of there is going to be some organizations which are like, okay, like we've lost like 40% of our income. We've lost
Yeah.
50% of our income. We need to do this. And
Yeah.
I only say this from the realms of what I saw last time with 2008 with that and this. See, I don't know how long the recession is going to last or how deep it's going to be, but it's not, it's everyone on the globe suffering, if you get what
Yeah.
I mean. So
Yeah.
there are companies
Yeah.
which are definitely, they're around, but they might not be here in 3 months' time. So that's the
see.
reason why I bring up.
We'll see. I do
Yeah.
have two questions. Do I have an extended yes to extend the session a little bit with 15 minutes? Yeah?
Yeah.
Session?
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to know what candidates can do. So if they see a company that is oozing the cultural fit biases, that is oozing the cultural fit during an interview, do they need to activate the Forrest Gump and run? So, Nick?
I think that depends. One, on how new your running shoes are. No, I'm just kidding. I think prior to the interview, you could take note of phrases and wording in the job description. Does it say things like, we're looking for someone who works hard and that we can grab a drink with? If so, you should think about why they would include something like that instead of adding, something more in the description around qualifications or experience that they're looking for. I see this often, maybe not as blatant as that, but it's not to say that the company is automatically bad or that this was intentional. But the type of statement definitely does make it seem like culture fit is prioritized over work skills and experience. But what if I'm a high performer who prefers to go home to my family after work? Or what if I'm taking night classes after work? Does that mean I shouldn't apply? So yeah, there's a lot to think about there. And I don't think that it's a yes or no answer. I feel like there's more to think about.
Okay, thank you. Sesen?
I'd say do your homework before that. Check the job description, but this will not give you so much information, to be honest, in Germany, because we have certain rules, right? So then go on website, Google them, be prepared about the questions you want to ask, check who's on their leadership team, check how they look like, double check on LinkedIn how fast someone was, elevated to the next level, and compare this between men and women, especially for the women, right? Because I suddenly hear a lot of times, we want to develop more women in leadership position. And then I could, now jump on them and tell them, look, you are not doing anything for women. But I tell them, okay, why are there not any women? And then you get the answer, we couldn't find them. And I was like, yeah, okay, but where do they hide? Beneath a stone? Or why is it not possible for you to find? What was so hard, right? And then you hear if they struggle. Then you ask them, okay, now you have the women. At which level are they? Yeah, we have women in leadership, but where are they? On the lowest level, team manager? And why? How long does it take your people to get to this level? You ask in general first, you get the answer for them. And then you ask, how many women are on this level? And if there are many, how long did it take them? But have a certain order with your question. Ask first neutrally with getting the answers for men, and then double check. And that's the way you can find out as a woman, for example. And then ask about their background. But be prepared. You need to have the answers up front by doing your research, and you can do this on social media, right? On their website. So they cannot.
Definitely. Yvonne?
So I agree with what everyone's indicating about doing your homework first, looking at the roster of the organization and certainly the team that you're going into to figure out, is there real diversity, right? In terms of not just identity diversity, but diversity of thought. Is the team known for innovation? Are they known for pushing the boundaries and even being willing to challenge some leadership ideologies? And in terms of during the interview, I often think about like when the interviewer might spend an inordinate amount of time, perhaps on your education, or if, let's just say, I went to a community college, and the recruiter's like really getting into the weeds about my coursework or what I learned, and to poke at kind of how educated I really am. Would that be happening to someone else who perhaps went to a more prestigious school? Would it receive that level of scrutiny? So I think that there are some things that you can kind of tell during the course of the interview that like they're skewing one way or another. And we know this to be, typical, the halo and horn effect, right? Like the latter being the opposite. And the premise that if a candidate did poorly in one particular area, it's assumed they did poorly in all areas. And being kind of attuned to those type of things. Say, for example, if you were let go from a position, or you were in a position for a short period of time, and they ask you why, and you indicate, well, perhaps, you say the role wasn't a good fit for me. And then they start to dig into that a little bit more, but it gives you the sense that they're looking at you as the potential issue versus perhaps the team or the organization wasn't a good fit for you, your skill sets, and what you want for yourself in your career. So those are the things I think that, as you're interviewing for positions, you need to be attuned to, and make a note of it. And as I often teach my teenage daughter in life, don't color red flags yellow or green. Red is a red. See it and respond accordingly.
Definitely. And I love the fact that you are mentioning, you all are mentioning do your homework, because it's so important for you to do your homework before you make a decision which can impact your future, which can impact your life and whatever choice that you are going to make. So don't be afraid to connect with a person and ask them, how is it really within this company? Is it like they say it on the website, or is it different? You can always reach out to somebody. Most of the time, maybe they will say no, but I also know for sure that there will be somebody out there who's willing to go the extra mile for you just to share the truth, right? Why not? You're nodding your head. You don't believe that, or?
No, like this is the thing. Like with everyone, what everyone said, like prior to myself, like killing yourself. Like you've raised some very good points. Yvonne's made some really good points. We're living in the 21st century. It's not like it's the 1990s or the early 2000s. Using the tools such as Glassdoor, basically reaching out, as you mentioned, with LinkedIn. I think it's very important, or just simply going on to forums where people have worked and might be able to give you much more of an insight. It, like, you got to remember, work, it's like going to be anything from 40 hours to maybe 50 hours of your life each and every week. And if you're going into an environment which doesn't fit you with that sort of cultural fit, you're just going to make yourself miserable. So knowing that, having all of that information, that knowledge to hand, use it. And so you can make a much more of an effective decision. If you are a social person and you like hanging out with people from work, but it's a very pinned up, uptight workplace, you're not going to really thrive there. And vice versa. So it comes down to, do your research. Always do your research. Save yourself the misery.
Let's start with that, and I want to ask you another question. So we have almost come to the end of the show, but I wanted to know, what will be your wish for 2025 when it comes to humanizing the workplace and the so-called culture fit?
Is up to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically to be more understanding, but also with regards to youngsters who are coming out of like school, colleges, have them have some type of system where they can like have that sort of full-on work experience, because we've all done the 9 to 5, like 5 days a week working, and you kind of learn a lot of new things very quickly when you're in the workplace. If you're doing the virtual work like situation, you're missing out on a lot of education which can help you along the way. So if we can do the like partial working from home and working like virtually, but help integrate that a little bit more so for people who are coming in, so they just can be accustomed to learning the ropes of what a workplace situation might be, or environment, I should say.
Good point. Good point. I forgot the awesome card, but I will use it this time. Thank you. I also wanted to add that connect people with mentorships, right? Connect people with mentors, because especially, not only youngsters, but everybody who is in the workplace needs to have a mentor. So if it's not internally, then go look for a mentor externally. Sesen.
The same as I, chose when I started. I'd like to create leaders with human touch, because I think this got lost somehow, and it's super important that they start caring about the people, right? And not faking it, but truly caring about giving them a great experience at work. And I don't think we have time till 2025 now.
No, we don't. We want it now.
Yeah, I think this year has changed the game dramatically, and time is running out, and I think we are done with the excuses, especially when we see the next generations coming in, right?
Mm-hmm. Who are more vocal. Yeah. Yvonne.
I would say that when organizations say that they want employees to feel as though they belong, that they move beyond the lip service to real strategic implementation of policies and efforts that reflect it. Asking their people what they're looking for and deliver that value back as reciprocity for what they expect from their employees and their contributions to the culture and the organization's success.
Yeah, we should also see it as a win-win, right? It's not only like, I feel like before this lockdown, there in some industries, there is a war for talent. And now it feels like so many people have lost their jobs, and so many companies have outstanding vacancies. They have a lot more options to choose from. Whereas once the situation stables, or the lockdown is over, you have to think about what you're doing now, how you're being perceived now, how you are treating your candidates or your future candidates now, because what you're doing now, they will remember. And if they don't remember, you always have, I'm Google, or maybe, hello Google, or maybe Amazon Alexa. Look what the company did in 2020. How diverse were they, right? They can always look up the answer. So there's no hiding anymore right now. Nick.
So +1 to your point earlier around mentorship. That's something I'm pretty passionate about. I love helping newer or younger designers kind of grow and figure out their career path. But yeah, my wish for 2025 is that people will become way more empathetic and aware of the dangers of hiring just for culture fit. But also that working remotely will help kind of level the playing field when it comes to, candidates applying to positions.
Can you elaborate that a little bit more?
Yeah, I everyone is forced to work from home, right? So what that does, I think, is it makes it a little more personal to you. What is your situation at home? What is your internet like? What is, let's say, since we're virtual, what is the quality of your audio and video like?
Mhm.
My not fear, but kind of assumption is that if remote work becomes more widely adopted, will those become new biases to candidates in the application process? Like, oh,
Yeah.
his internet was poor. It really affected the way that I perceived his work, or his audio kept cutting out, or, you know, her video didn't work. You know what I mean? So yeah, I hope people just become more empathetic and understanding that, again, everyone's in a different situation.
Yeah. We need Wi-Fi, right, as our basic human necessity. So we need that, especially
Yeah.
now. Yes, it was an amazing conversation. Thank you all for sharing your insights on the culture fit, and I'm hoping that those who are watching or those who are listening are really tuning in towards leaning towards the cultural ad instead of leaning towards the culture fit, because you are purposely or unpurposely, you are excluding people when you're activating your cultural fit during your vacancy or in your job vacancy or in your during your interview. And I want us to do better. So I also wanted to say hi to a few people that shared hi. So Michael say early birds rock. Yes, I believe so as well. And Haidar, who's working at ABN AMRO, is also saying hi. Yes, it was amazing. And thank you all for joining in this conversation. I wanted to close off with what I usually do, and that is saying thank you for everybody who watched. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. And I also want to ask you something, right? I did not share the guest speaker of next week because I'm still we are in a confirmation session, but I know that the guest speaker is a lady. That's something that I can share. She's a woman. She is residing in the United States and she's an author. She also has an audiobook. That's something that I can share, but for now, I'll still keep it a secret and hopefully we can share soon who my next guest speaker is. So thank you all for watching, and don't forget to share the love on iTunes or other, hosting platform, podcast hosting platforms, because I just want other people to know that humanizing the workplace is not an effort only that I do or my guest speakers do. I want it to be a manifesto for everybody who's working in the workplace. So for the employers and also for the employees as well. Thank you for watching, and until next time. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.